see why this is not. There we go. Coming in late, I apologize. A little miscommunication. Bringing you some OCS top 8 action. We've got Chris Wirfs currently on light side playing QMC versus Casey Annis, on dark side with Revenge of the Sith Maul. We're picking it up as things are happening here. Casey dropped a Profundity into a barrier in front of Fett and Slave 1. Wirfs dropped a Profundity. Casey barriered, so Wirfs followed up with the wild card and some smugglers. We had Lisa, Jar Jar, well, I guess one smuggler and 2 random species. It does, however, put him at 5 species on table, and he's getting +1 to the Battle Destiny to the total Battle Destiny with Rio. So not a bad spot to be in, and gives him a chance to clear the Boba Fett off the system. Profundity is excluded. Chris draws a 3 for Battle Destiny, so he's not gonna clear Fett there. I mean, it's a +1. However, Chris is going to be totally immune as well, so Casey's going to be down a force. They're both immune. I expect this Casey's just going to peel a force and then fly Boba Fett away. Again, we picked this up a couple turns in, so Casey's got Maul and Erica at Jabba's Palace locations, draining, and then Aura with Blaster Rifle and Aplek at the Cloud City location, the Cloud City Upper Corridor. And Chris has 5 species on table, although no watering hole, and has a couple systems, couple sites. Like, he's in a good spot right here. So Casey masterful moves to get a kick, and then 4 alarms. He can activate most of what he's got there, so he's going to have a couple solid destinies right at the end. And I apologize. Let me catch up the who's playing what. I just kind of jumped into this as quick as I could when I got home, so we could pick up as much of the game as possible. Again, just a little miscommunication on my end. I forgot to make sure we had coverage here. So Casey activates a whole bunch, and gets a couple drains out. Oh, Chris apparently had, he says in chat, he forgot to put out Watering Hole because he wondered why his Battle Destiny wasn't a 5. So he's trying to make it easy on Casey. He's making it tough for Spidey Guys 0. Trying to make it tough on himself, give Casey a fighting chance. Again, this is the OCS top 8 matchup. These guys both won their opening round, and a couple very good players. I know Casey was just in Ohio with me last weekend. Cheap plug, if you haven't been to a live event in a while, make it out. The live playing with other people and cards is just way too much fun, and it's tough to miss. So we see Wirfs canceled the drain at Cloud City and lost a couple force to the drains at Jabba's Palace. I mean, right now he's still in a decent position, although it'll depend a lot on what those 6 cards in Casey's hands are. You know, because Chris has no force active, which means he's not going to be able to barrier, he's not going to be able to do much. If Casey's got a couple guys and can figure out a way to come down on that Lando Din Ray pile, especially if he's got some way to exclude, this could get kind of snarly kind of quick for Chris. So let's see where this goes, although I do think in general QMC is somewhat advantaged in this matchup. So Casey also, I think, knows that and is trying to figure out what's my What's my win condition here? I see a bunch of people kind of jumping in. That's awesome. Thank you. Let's remove the results part because that was from yesterday. There we go. So, KC, search for Jabba's Palace site, drop the Droid Workshop, really just get the 0 out of his deck. Based on him masterful moving and then 4 lambing, he's got at least 1 6 and maybe 2 floating in those 4. Could be a 6 and a 7. That's not going to be enough right now to battle with Boba Fett, though. So I think he's gonna have to move Boba away. I wouldn't be shocked to see Boba go to Bespin, although he might feel safer going to Nal Hutta just because Bespin, there's a ship there and it is a Cal Fal on board it, so that could do what Casey doesn't want done. So Casey's in his deploy phase right now, just I think tanking a little bit and figuring out what do I want to do? How do I want to do this? And it's also possible Casey put that Droid Workshop, had it in hand and put it down with 4-LOM because he knew he could then pull it, and it'd give him a free search of his reserve, and so he could see what was in there and figure out his play and his line here. We see, looks like Harkstaff landed at some point, moved over. He is now dead, so there's at least one battle we missed, which would make sense because Applek and Aura are there. And yeah, right now we're just seeing what. Okay, so Casey is not deploying anything. That's unfortunate. I don't think that's what he wanted to be doing. He moves Aura to Leia's hut, leaving Applek at the Drain +1 site just to force Chris's hand. Didn't want to move them into that battle at Cloud City, although I'm not entirely sure that wouldn't have been fine. And otherwise, just kind of moving guys around. Moves Erica and Lord Maul in so he can theoretically next turn put someone at Jabba's Palace, although I think that might just be Casey using some cards to make sure he's got enough reserve deck to draw Destinies a few times if need be next turn, because there's really not a lot he's doing right here. I think turn did not go the way he wanted it to there with 18 force and 6 in hand and not being able to do anything aggressively in any way. Feels a little bad. Again, I missed some action at the start, so I'm sure that, there are some things he could have done that might have already happened. Like, if he'd lost a ship already, he might have been able to Jabba's Haven. If you have Zuckuss and Mist Hunter and Lost, like Jabba's Haven and drop it on Leia would be solid. So, Casey moves some guys, goes into his draw phase. During his draw phase, Wirfs moves Rey in front of Aura. I'm not entirely sure what the plan is there. Like, Rey's got immune to less than 3. Aura's got no immunity. Probably going to hit. Like, this feels like a Chris has something else going on plan, because Rey by herself, that just doesn't, there's no value in that move. And Casey stacks the path on something special planned for them. Chris goes right away with the Rey. Personally, and then he's going keeping the Empire out forever. Personally, I would have keeping first because it'll give you a reshuffle. Like if that bottom card is not the one you want or not necessarily the one you want, you can get a reshuffle out of it. And if it is the one you want, you're just going to take it with keeping anyways. And then you get a Rey shuffle. So like probably a 50-50 shot though. Like I don't think it makes a huge difference. Just a sequencing thing that try and maximize value on keeping, maximize what you can get out of it. And Casey going with a 4-LOM just to cycle. Yeah, I mean, he's going to drain here for 3, 1 at Bespin. And Casey loses double back from reserve, which he's totally fine with. That's Forlom's out. Dengar's very possibly in his hand, or, you know, you're just not that concerned. One at the North Corridor. There goes a Phantom Menace from used pile. And then one at Rindley, which is going to be a Lord Maul from hand. A solid loss, because I don't think Wirfs is not going to do anything to Maul. Maul is sitting at Jabba's Audience Chamber draining for 1. Chris is going to drop. Very likely Celebration, yep, and that might be why he pathed Rey there, was just so he could drop Celebration and didn't want to forget to do it during his turn or have Casey play something that would stop him from doing it. And the Ancient Watering Hole, so he does have 5 species on table. He's got Rio, Jar Jar, Lisub, Din, and Calfel. So all his drains now are +1, all his total battle destinies are +1. And Casey is in a rough spot. Like, I don't know how to say that nicely. Casey's a very good player. He may be able to get himself out of it, but this can be a tough spot, because I gotta assume Chris has got an ability to beat up on Aura Singh, and he's really totally okay with space sitting exactly as it is. You're like, all right, fine, drain me for 1 and 1 and retrieve 1 with Erica. Right now I'm draining for 6 instead of your 2 and retrieving 2. Like, there's Ayla Sakura at the docking bay. Okay. I'm still a little confused about what the plan is here for Chris, what his kind of end game is as far as getting through this. I gotta assume he's sitting on a barrier or something, but like, he didn't have one last turn. And there he just goes for a straight battle. Says, all right, well, I'm going to draw a Battle Destiny. The total's +2. I'm going to kill Aura, and I'm unlikely to take battle damage. Like, even if he hits Rey, you're not going to take any overflow, so you just go, okay. And here, Chris retrieves the Talls that was on top of his lost pile. Casey loses Prince Shizor from hand. The Shizor from hand is a little bit of a surprise. You'd think you'd want guys, you'd want bodies, and especially Shizor, who will, you know, can jump on a lone character and theoretically stop them from drawing. Casey takes a shot and misses. Chris draws a 3 for Battle Destiny, which turns into a 5 between Rey and the Ancient Watering Hole. And Casey draws a 5, so he'll kill Rey, and that's wipes the site. Chris is fairly happy with that going on. I don't think he expected to have immunity go through. You know, she's only immune to less than 3, and this Rot Stack gets its destiny pretty high, pretty quick. But overall, I think he's perfectly content with that. All of what happened there. He's going to follow the Profundity in the wild card in front of Boba Fett, and again, he says, all right, you're going to drain for 2, because he'll cancel the North Corridor drain, or the Upper Plaza Corridor drain. And Casey now uses Jabba's Haven to retrieve. I mean, I guess, are you getting back Ayla? He's doing it in draw phase, so again, Chris can't move to back anyone up. I mean, you get back Aura to go after Ayla, that feels a little weak. We'll see what where he goes with this, and he grabs Shizor back. That feels okay. I'm not sure what his plan is, because there's nowhere where Shizor comes down and moves the needle by himself. And Casey just, I think, cycling some cards, plays a Dark Time to activate a force, because Chris is not going to be canceling Battle Destinies anywhere. So he doesn't necessarily need that. Wonder if he's planning to do something with Shizor and excluding somehow Din or Lando. Like, although, well, I mean, if you're going to exclude, you just exclude Din, and then Lando doesn't add anyways because he only adds if with your alien on Cloud City. So, Casey's going to activate drains for one at the lower passages, and excuse me, Chris loses Maz. Chris does his keeping the Empire out forever shenaniganery to grab any one card from his force pile. It feels like this is probably a barrier. Like, this is definitely a spot where you'd want to have barrier, and we see a drain of 2 at the audience chamber. Chris loses a Nabron from reserve deck, and it is only a drain of 1 because of Menace Fades, so he added 1 and did nothing. So Chris loses Nabron. Applik drains at the North Corridor, or the Upper Plaza, and Chris cancels it. And then Casey retrieves 1 with Erica. He's going to retrieve that Aura Sing with Blaster Rifle. So he's getting her back into reserve, which is fine. Like I said, I want to see what his plan is with Shizor, because Jabba's Haven's a pretty powerful thing. And there's Zuckuss and Mist Hunter in front of the transport. Chris only has 1 force active, so he's not going to be able to alternatives, and he can't use the Hujix combo to draw Battle Destiny because it's not a starfighter. So there's the barrier. Like, felt like he had to have it. Now, does Casey have an answer for barrier besides just grabbing it? Like, Casey does have the sense, and he doesn't bother grabbing it because Chris has no more force. Chris with the altar. Is it 1997 somewhere? Like, are we seeing Sense Altar Wars and Star Wars on Gemp? Altar straight cancels Sense, and Zuckuss is stuck there. Cannot battle, cannot move. I don't think he really wanted to move with him, but he sure would have liked to battle, and now, unfortunately, I think that's going to force Casey to move Boba Fett over there as well, just to have a second ship there, because if Chris has got enough to go down on him, this could be real bad. And here's Kylo with lightsaber. I mean, is this where you come down with Shizor as well? Like, then you don't have any force, though. So, or are you, well, I mean, we know he's got the Gick. Are you just going to try and battle, clear off both of them, and go, well, if I have to Gick it, I Gick it, and move on? Not a terrible play. Honestly, like, one of the things to beat, like, you beat QM2 is just getting rid of them. You kill Lando and Din. If you kill Din, you shut off Watering Hole, which is real good. And you block off that site. Like, you can move Applik there and start, forcing Chris to have answers, and Chris has only got 4 cards in hand. Granted, he's got an effectively unlimited get one of anything in hand because of his keeping, but it is still only 1 card. Like, you're still not necessarily in the spot you want to be in. And Chris says the Destiny in reserve, as he got to verify, is 2, 3, 4, 5. So Casey can swing with Kylo if Chris has the Rescue in the Clouds. I think you got to swing at Lando. There's the excluder. So you definitely, I think, still swing at Lando with Rescue in the Clouds. Like, if Din gets one, he gets one. But if he's got... Oh, you know what? He doesn't have the force to Rescue in the Clouds because of first strike. So, no. You swing at Din. You just say, I hope I don't draw the 2. All right. Yeah, seeing the 4, I definitely don't like that. I think I would have swung at Din no matter what. I don't like the... Because you swing at Din, everybody lives. So, in this case, with the 4-3, like, he's not necessarily... I mean, Din will probably die to Battle Destiny, but Din does get one, which is bad. And depending on what he draws and what Casey draws... So Casey maxes out at... Well, I guess Casey could draw the 5. Casey maxes out at 17. Yeah, I don't think Chris can keep Din around. Either way. But Casey's also out of force. Like, if Chris can do something, it could get bad. So there's the 5. So yeah, Casey hit the Destiny about as hard as he could have. So he's going to have 17. Din forfeits for 6, so he's at 12 right now, effectively. He's at 14. So he's losing Din in 3, which isn't terrible, but is not great. Excuse me, Din in 4. I was thinking it was still right. I was adding +2 to the Destiny, not +1. So that's a little rough for Chris. This is not the way he wanted that to go. As he's going to lose his Maz, loses Yoda from hand, loses the Rescue and the Krellits from reserve deck, and loses Din. Din covers +1 from Watering Hole. And now Watering Hole is, however, shut off. Or no, it's still on. 1, 2, 3, because Ayla's a Twi'lek, so never mind. Watering Hole is still turned on, so Casey might be in kind of a bad spot, and he's going to lose Aplek as well. Which is also not great for him. I don't love the position Casey's in right now. Like, it's not terrible, but it's just not great either, necessarily. So Aplek is going out of play. And that means he's not coming back. Probably not a huge deal. I mean, if Casey's running more than 2, I'd be super shocked, and honestly, he might not even be running 2. Wirfs does only have 14 cards down right now, though. Casey's got 22. Wirfs has got 2 in hand, so Wirfs only got 16 cards total to work with, where Casey's at 27. That being said, well, we just saw Casey make Wirfs peel 3. Depending on what Wirfs has here, this could get bad for Casey. Like, Wirfs could absolutely knock him out of space this turn. He's drawing the totals +1 from Watering Hole. He's outpowering him at both systems. He needs a character with ability 4, really, to go with Leia's transport against Zuckuss. But, like, you do that. If he's got, like, a Rey in there, this could be effectively over real quickly, because he's going to end up, killing both ships. Casey's already used Jabba's Haven. He's going to get first strike damage and retrieval off it as well, and put Casey in a position where he's got to pay for all his damage. And it's all Menace Fades slowed down because of Ayla. And, like, Chris may not win this by a ton, but if he's got space answers, he's going to win this game, I think, frankly, somewhat comfortably. So he'll grab a card here with Keeping, and then he'll pay 1 to Celebration to retrieve 1 with Ayla, and Force Drain for 2 at the docking bay. Like, this is the power of Watering Hole. Like, when you get this set up, the numbers start jumping up real quick. And again, like, I don't know Wirfs' deck. I would want and I don't know what was in his 2-card hand, but I would be looking for a ability 4 pilot, or some sort of way to get up to 4 ability on the transport. Like, you need another pilot on there. If you have 2 characters that total up to that, you need to be like, all right, I'll put him move Cal to passenger and move them up to pilot type thing. Because Casey's also not going to be able to barrier. Casey can't stop whatever Chris does this turn. But that'll work. There's Hanshuing the Falcon. So it's not an ability 4 pilot. It's instead a ship with ability 5 and a destiny to power. And yeah, Casey is in a unpleasant way here, I think. And especially with the possibility that he could end up with a 0 for Battle Destiny with Zuckuss if he hits a low number because of Cal-Fal. Like, that's definitely not the way he wants that to go, and Chris is perfectly content with what's going on here. And that was kind of my concern with Casey using all his force. Like, you're not going to be able to move your ships together, and now you're probably going to lose both systems. And Chris throws a Tals on the Resistance Transport. I like that play a lot. Basically, like, the only thing that really hurts you now is if Casey draws a 6 or a 7. Because that Tals is a species for watering hole. So now you've got 6, and if Casey draws a 5, you can just forfeit Cal and be okay. And Chris paid 1 to retrieve 1, and I don't think he meant to do that, because that's going to stop him from battling against Boba. So let's see if he asks for a revert or says no. Let's see if he asks for a revert. Let's see if Casey very gentlemanly says, okay, well, let's revert it because you know, we play the game to win, obviously. All of us are competitive. All of us want to win. But, you know, he didn't change anything. He said as soon as it happened, hey, that was a mistake. That was a misclick. Casey does, however, give away a little bit of info because he lost Hondo from his hand first and then lost the comm scan from reserve deck. So Chris draws that altar for total power, so he's now at 17 to Casey's 4. There's a 4 for Battle Destiny. So his total Battle Destiny is going to be a 5. Let's see what Casey draws here, because if this is not a 5, it's going to be bad. All right. It's a 4. He's fine with that 4. You know, it kills the Tals, which is extra good for Chris. And yep, you see the Tals die, and Casey's going to lose Zuckuss and 9. Or the Gik. Yep, so Zuckuss and Gik, which is, again, Chris is happy right now. Like, Chris is now going to take out Boba, and Casey's going to be in a position where he's not going to be able to do much. Like, he'll be able to cause a little bit of damage, but he's going to be paying for all of it. And Casey loses Lord Sidious off the top. Probably fine. And Chris draws a 1 for Battle Destiny, so even with that being a total of 3, it's still not necessarily going to clear Boba. Boba draws a 4. I mean, at that point, I think you got to lose the Profundity, because you only have the 5 species. Chris steals Zuckuss and Mist Hunter. Oh, good lord. All right. So Casey's down 3. Like, here's the thing. If you pay those 3, you just peel the 3 to drain for free and move. Okay. He does peel the 3. Loses P-59, always 2 there are, and Lord Sidious. So he keeps Boba in play, but Chris now has a Zuckuss and Mist Hunter to throw at him. Now we see Chris lands Leia's transport and has Ayla, or has, I'm assuming Cal-Fal is going to disembark. Not a terrible plan, just, you know, there's no reason to have her up there. Leave her down, and you can path her somewhere later. Although I think you can't path from the docking bay from research. An interior mobile site to a related interior mobile site. The docking bay is not interior, so you cannot path to or from the docking bay. I guess you could theoretically, if he wants to, he could move Calfel to the upper walkway. I don't think I'd like that. You have no force. Yep, and Wirfs says discretion is the better part of valor and keeps Calfel with Ayla. Keeps his 5 species on table. Boba's got, Casey's going to have to move Boba to Rendley and then do nothing. So we get a drain of 2 at the North Corridor. There goes that Obi-Wan off the top and a Hujix combo. A drain of 1 at Jabba's Palace. Casey will add 1 to it, which is okay, fine. Still a drain of 1. Menace Fades is still in effect. Chris loses I Don't Like Sand. And a drain of 1, which is probably going to be that altar off the top as well. Yep, there it goes. And Casey will pay 1 to retrieve 1. He is just trying to, he's trying to keep this game close. He's doing as much damage as he can. Wirfs is down to 12 cards total. He's lost a lot of the things he would have liked to have. And Casey's trying to just keep things moving. He uses Sith Fury to grab a character. He's grabbing Lord Sidious. He's got enough. He'll probably put Lord Sidious down at Leia's hut. Yep. His epic event, Revenge of the Sith, says his force trains can't be modified or canceled at an opponent's battleground. Leia's hut is an opponent's battleground. It's got the drain -1 text, so now Casey can't ignore that, and he's going to just try and keep causing damage. He uses 1 to move Slave 1 away. We saw he drew a barrier for Battle Destiny. Is he gonna... And actually, that might be the card he just drew. No, because those would have been at the top of his force pile, not the bottom. So he's at least threatening a barrier. He is, however, going to get drained for 6 here. And Chris leaves 2 in his reserve, so he's planning to do something. Not sure what the second one is for, is kind of my question. So, let's see. I could certainly see Zuckuss and Misthunter on Fat and Slave 1 and just kick Casey out of space after you drain him for 6 and put him in a position of he's paying for all his damage, and at that point you win the game. You don't win him by a lot, but you win the game. But is that what he's going to do? Let's see. So he's activated. He activated 8. Uses keeping to get a card. So now he's down to 7. So if he drops Zuckuss and Misthunter, he's not retrieving with First Strike because he won't have the Force. He is, however, going to make Casey lose still, which is fine. And again, it's really at that point you're just, I want to clear Fett. That's all I care about. And he may be looking for an answer to the barrier he is expecting. Well, Casey can't barrier. Barrier stacked on tragedy that happened before the stream started. So we are catching up here. Again, I apologize. We got started a little bit late here, and I'm certainly a little bit flustered running through things because I just kind of scrambled into the house and said hi to my wife while I ran downstairs to start streaming for y'all. But there's a bunch of action that's going to be coming up. This is the last game of the top 8 for the OCS. Brian Jellison, Brian Fred, and I'm utterly spacing on the third person who advanced, but there was a third person for sure who advanced, and I can't go digging to look it up right now. So this will be the last game of the top 4. We see the Drain of 2, we see Hondo and Sniper and Darkstrike go away. So we're going to have the top 4 matches coming up relatively soon. There's an Applet and a Stunning Leader off reserve to the Drain of 2. The Champions League should be starting pretty soon. If you were not able to watch it last night, Pat Johnson beat Batmouse Anthony Howard in the Jawa Brawl final. There's a lot of stuff going on. You can see that on YouTube. You can check out the YouTube channel, I believe. The live action from the Ohio Mega Worlds that just happened is either on YouTube now or it will be soon enough. Lots of action going on. So Chris ended up activating one more force. So he's only leaving one in reserve deck, which makes more sense. He retrieves the altar with Celebration. Honestly, I expect at this point it's going to be Zuckuss and Mist Hunter on top of Boba. Battle. It's really just a do you crack his immunity? Because Boba Fett's not going to... I mean, the Destiny is going to be 0 coming back. So Chris searches his reserve deck. Casey gets a verify. Let's see what Chris found in there and what he decides to do, because that might change. I mean, I don't think it does. Like, unless it's so bad that he's not even causing force loss against Boba, I think you've got to still drop in battle. So, because your total destiny is going to be +1 with Watering Hole, so you're effectively 5 to his 7. You're immune to less than 4 as well because it's an independent starship, I believe. 98% sure. We'll see when he deploys it. So there's still action to go here. Oh, I should probably change the commentator name too. So again, you know, Chris and Casey both know what that destiny is. I do not, so we're just hoping. Casey is all right. Chris didn't like the destiny as he drops Figrindan to the 1-0, giving him another drain of 1 there, along with more retrieval. And I gotta imagine we're just gonna see the wild card move in front of Boba. And that's not really great for Wirfs. Like, now you're going to be eating drains of 2, 4, 6 and retrieving 1. And you're not killing Casey next turn. So let's see where this goes. And we see Leia's Resistance Transport take off, which, okay, so I think he's going to probably move Han and the Falcon to Nal Hutta. He says, Casey, there's no way you have another ship to come at me with, so I'm fine with leaving the Resistance Transport alone and taunting you with it and adding another drain. Like, Casey's got 9, 10, 11, 13 cards, and he's going to get drained for 2, 4, 6, 7 if he does nothing. And then Chris... Casey's going to drain for 6 and retrieve 1 here. And Chris asks for another revert. I don't know if he's... Alright, so he did the same move. Not entirely sure what the revert was for. Oh, and he moves Figrindan for free to block the drain of 2 with Kylo. Figrin does draw on his own. And then he moves Calfal to the 1-0 using that tax to, again, he's trying to block some drain from Casey, because if he takes a drain of 1, I mean, he still loses 2. I guess he still loses 2 at that battle because he probably gets hit, and he definitely loses 1 to first strike. So I don't know that I love that play. Like, you're losing 2 either way, but if you'd have kept Figrin, you could keep Figrin on table and you could retrieve 1, and you get drained for... You're still going to lose 6, which puts you down to 6 cards total. But then you could retrieve 2 and theoretically win that drain race by like 2. So, that being said, he made his choice going the other way and loses Leia and Luke, the Last Jedi, from reserve. So yeah, his reserve deck was a 1, which is about the worst card, because then you really can't battle Fat and Slave 1, like you end up down a force. Drain a 1, he loses Celebration. Drain a 1, he's going to lose probably just another, like I gotta imagine at this point it's another card off the top. He's got 2 cards in hand and he definitely likes them, so let's see what they are. I also wonder if Casey's got, well, this isn't retrieving the hand, I don't believe. Something special is, yeah, just retrieve a starship, and you don't necessarily. And Chris loses the Zuckuss. Yeah, I don't think you want to give him the something special in the path back just to do that. So Casey retrieves Maul Strikes. Now I wonder if Wirfs has a path in hand, and he's just waiting until deploy phase and then pathing Figrin somewhere else, maybe? Like, that would be a play. And there's Nuke Gunray coming down with Kylo, which is definitely not what Chris really wanted to have happen. And there is the path, and there's Figrin going to the Upper Plaza walkway. So he blocks the Drain of 2. He's still going to get the Figrin retrieval. That was exactly what Wirfs needed to have happen there. That was the card he needed to have in hand. At this point, I think Casey's got to move Boba to Bespin and just eat some drains. Like, there's nothing else he can do right now. And honestly, if Casey's got a pilot, that might hurt. Or not Casey, excuse me. Chris has got a pilot in it left in his deck. He can activate all but 1. And then theoretically, again, drain for a bunch and kill Boba and put Casey in a position where he has to pay to drain, and he may just run out of force. So, yep, we see Boba move in front at Bespin. So Casey's going to get drained for 7 next turn, which is going to put him down to 6 cards total. Because right now he's got 13. Oh, he moves Kylo in front of Calfal and Figrin. Okay. I'm all right. He blocks a Drain of 1. Like, you gonna move Sidious in front of Ayla? Like, that might be bad, because at some point, like, First Strike is also gonna do its damage. Like, yeah, you're gonna get drained for 4. I mean, we talked about what would happen last turn. Like, the First Strike plus Kylo hitting somebody would have done the same amount of damage as the drain. So Chris has the path. That was the right play. I think Casey might be thinking about moving Sidious in front of Ayla. I do not think I'd like that. You've got the Overseer that's forfeit 5 there. Casey says, nope, I'm going to draw a card instead. So he's got 11 down and 2 in hand. Chris has got 7 down and no hand. Like, the board position, if you don't know QMC, looks real good for Casey here. Casey's spread. Casey's got a lot of damage, threatening a lot of damage. The problem is, with Watering Hole, Casey's going to get drained for 6 of those 13. So he's going to be down to 7, he's going to be down to 7 cards total. And Chris activates all of it, so he doesn't think he has a pilot, would be my read on that. I don't like that play. Like, I think if you've got to have a character in there to utilize and get value out of, drop a pilot on Leia's resistance transport, battle, get First Strike, and, draw hopefully high enough to kill Boba, but at least high enough to force potential force loss. Although Casey gets a Destiny back, so you might not cause any force loss. But if you can draw 5, you take Casey off space, and at that point you just win. Like, Casey uses Lord Sidious to try and get Always 2 There Are, and gives up a Verify, so there was no Always 2 There Are in there, which would have been a nice card for Casey just to be like, hey, I've got 2 Sith on table, lose a couple force. So Chris went and got a card with keeping, so he's got 6 force active and 1 in hand. He's drains for 2 at Rendley, drains for 2 at the docking bay. Expect we'll see a drain for 2 at Nalhutta. Yep, there's a drain of 2 at Nalhutta. Actually, you know what? Never mind. Chris can figure Dan to recirculate once per game. So, yeah, once per game may recirculate. So I expect we'll see a couple retrieval here as Casey loses Aura and an Imperial Barrier from hand. So Casey is at 6 cards in reserve deck, 1 in hand. Chris is at 6 in force pile and 1 in hand. Like I said, I'm expecting here he's going with Lee Sub first, just to keep getting a ping. Names Interrupt, and reveals the top card of Casey's deck and sends the Stunning Leader to Lost Pile. So Casey's now down to 5 cards in deck and 1 in hand, which puts it even better. If Chris can take him out of space, Casey can do 2 damage. Casey can drain him for 2 and then retrieve 1, and at that point, Chris has the game, although this is going to be very close. So next game is really going to be the kicker. So we see Chris chooses not to retrieve with Celebration, moves to deploy phase, so he's got a pilot that costs 3 or 4. There it is, Dash Rendar on the Resistance Transport. So yep, he could not have afforded to retrieve. Uses Figurin to recirculate. Dash depends opponent's gangster, maintenance, or permanent weapon card, so he's not doing any of those things. It's just going to be a straight battle here. With first strike, Chris goes for the search just to see what his destiny looked like, and Casey gets the verify. I don't think there's going to be any shocks here. Let's see if Casey... Chris is not happy with his reserve deck, it looks like. I'm assuming that's what means. Gets the battle anyways. He may choose not to retrieve here. Yep, he chooses not to retrieve because it looks like he might be thinking he might need to move someone there. Casey loses the Shizor from hand because at this point he's not going to hit the table anyways. And let's see what he hits. Oh, he does hit the 5 for Battle Destiny. Watering Hole makes that a 6, and he knocks Casey out of space. Casey hits a 5 as well. Chris is totally fine with that 5. That's what Dash is up there for. And really that's game. Casey's going to drain for 2 and retrieve 1. And Chris is going to be totally okay with that. Like, I think he'll probably... I don't think it even matters. Like, if you move them... I guess you probably move them away from Kylo just to avoid... I mean, what are you avoiding? Yeah, Casey's got 5 cards down, nothing in hand, and has to pay to drain now. So Chris is going to win this game. Unless, I mean, I say unless, but like there's literally nothing Casey can do as far as I can tell. Casey can activate all of it, pay 3 to drain for 2 at Sidious's location, and then retrieve 1 with Erica. And I'm not even sure that's, like, it might be better just to draw here. Like, you're going to drain for 2, and then you're going to give up 2 retrieval. And Wirfs has a card in hand. Like, I think Casey says no. Casey activates 4, so he's... I guess maybe he's not even going to retrieve. He'll just battle with first strike to knock out 1 more. Chris loses the perimeter scan and an altar from reserve deck. And then, yeah, maybe he's just going to battle at the North Corridor and cause the first strike ping and bring Chris down to 3 force. as Chris loses a Rebel Barrier off the top. Okay, Casey is drawing. Casey draws a 5, which kills Cal. And Chris draws a 1. Casey is actually immune. But it doesn't matter because Casey's only got 5 cards and he's getting drained for 8. So Chris loses Cal. Yeah, Chris will win this game by 5. Because he still keeps 2. Yeah, he's still got 5 species. So Chris should activate 3, retrieve with Figrin, retrieve with Celebration, and then drain him out. So, yep, and Chris sees that. So 5. Casey's got 34 and lost. Chris is going to have, be 6 because Secret Plan, because gets him twice. So 32 and lost, and yeah, Chris wins the game by 6. Real close game. Honestly, I think, like I said, Casey is generally at a disadvantage this game. So getting him down to 6 is pretty solid. Like, that was a well done shot. So Casey runs out of force. Casey has 39 and lost. 39 to 32 plus 6. Let's see. Are they going to do game 2 right away? I know that was the plan. Casey says he's ready to play game 2 if Chris is. And Chris says, yep. So let's close this. Wait for game 2 to start here. And game 1 results. Let's get it up here, and Casey drops it right up there. Get that going. Casey's got the match already set up. Casey will be going light on this one versus Wirfs Stark. And let's get the action going. So Wirfs with Watto. And Casey with his own QMC. All right, a lot of QMC. I sort of expected Casey to go with Hitco. Dance with the girl what brung ya, because he's definitely paid a whole bunch of that. And actually, he beat me fairly soundly in Ohio with Hitco versus Watto. But Casey's going with QMC. Chris going quietly observing Nichubana, and your insight serves you well. Mold point, or you can't hide forever. Mold points. Casey, computer interface to get Belden's Eye and all my urchins combo and keeping. This is potentially a rough matchup for Casey. Watto puts out a lot of early damage, and that's one of the ways to beat QMC, and especially Watering Hole QMC, is just roll so much damage out they can't recover. If he's going to be able to do that, I'm not sure. So Casey grabs Rendley with You Can't Hide Forever. Wirfs is thinking about suspending to stop the immediate, or excuse me, Casey's thinking about suspending to stop the immediate search and destroy grab. If I'm Casey, I think I do it. You don't want to give Wirfs any more damage right away than you can, anything you can slow down. Wirfs is going to drop the Goldenrod Shield. All right. Excuse me, Casey drops Goldenrod. And Wirfs goes with Quietly Observing and gives Casey another chance to drop Don't Do That Again. Revealing Sebulba and Watto with Quietly Observing, so that means they are both Black Sun agents, and therefore Chris can drop Fanfare for Shizor's Bounty and just say, okay, let's go. Chris does drop Fanfare for Caesar's Bounty. I usually wait a minute on that because you want to grab... You're comfortable doing the... I'll put him down and draw some and see if you activate into it and save yourself that shield pull. I'm thinking Chris might have opening-handed Search and Destroy, though, because he didn't pitch You Can't Hide Forever after Casey chose not to suspend it. So, maybe it worked out and Casey not popping the shield doesn't have anything to impact the game in any way, because he doesn't really have Jedi, so them being defense value -1 is pretty immaterial. Like, he's got Ayla, who's probably going to be with other aliens and can't be targeted anyways. Excuse me. So Chris activates 7, goes with Nichuma Na to go get Malastare. Or not. Alright, so he goes for Sebulba first. Does the once per game pull for Sebulba, drops Sebulba to Mos Espa. Now he deploys Malastare. That was the wrong order, but I mean, he's probably got 2 Sebulbas in there, so it's probably fine. Drops Malastare, drops Rendalee. I expect we'll see a Watto from reserve. First we must accelerate, and Chris is going to have everything set up to start playing Disrupt real hard, real quick on Casey. And that's kind of what Watto does. Like, you're going for quick, fast damage. You don't want to play the long game. Like, if Casey gets 2 watering holes up and in play, that's bad. Wirfs won by 6. Did I... Oh. I probably hit Numlock by accident. There we go. Yeah, it was Wirfs by 6, 32 to 39, and lost. I apparently hit the number lock key when I was typing and made everything go funky. And there's Watto from hand. Either Wirfs activated all his Wattos, or he's just playing this fast and loose, because you always, especially if you have an opening hand Watto, you want to go with Watto from reserve and save that hand Watto. So we do see Jared Jetzer subscribed with Prime. You've got 5 months with Prime. Thank you very much. Prime is one of those great ways you can support the PC. Wirfs did his Watto damage while I was hyping up our Prime membership, and Casey loses Alternatives to Fighting and Don't Tread on Me from hand. And there comes Search and Destroy from hand. So yeah, Wirfs did open-hand it. Jared, I joke about you needing to steal your parents' Prime sub, but I'm a whole ass adult and I use my parents' Prime sub to subscribe because they have Prime and only one of us needs to have it. So same thing. Nothing wrong with that. Wirfs plays Search and Destroy, draws 1, so he's going to make Casey lose another one. Casey loses Ray off the top. And again, this is what Watto wants to do. It wants to do a ton of damage real early and put you on your back foot and make you have a response. And QMC probably doesn't have great responses. But this may be one of those weird decks where Casey might be willing to pay a couple times and be like, fine, deploy a guy. I'm not sure. So Casey uses Belden's Eye, so he's going to get Hark and the Overseer out. They'll bump his activation by 1 because Chris only has the 1 non-battleground out. But it's still, it also gives him the ship. Chris saved 2 Force, so he's Barrier plus Shizor's Bounty in case Casey decides to get spicy and drop some guys. The one thing Casey does have going for him with this deck is I would very much expect he's playing Jar Jar Binks, who could really mess up Watto's day. Depending on the version of this, of the Watto deck that Chris is playing, though, it does have very high destiny and could make that difficult as well. Casey grabbing a site with QMC. I wonder if he's going to just go for the super quick flip, like Harksef. There's the North Corridor from hand, so he's going to... Both of them are going to be activating as much as they need to. There's Chris grabbing his Grabber Shield. Casey with another sight from hand. That's unfortunate. Like, having one in hand isn't terrible, but you don't want to have all your pullable cards in hand. Like, that's just a feels bad kind of moment. Like, leave those in reserve deck. Give me a card I can't pull so I can go get them when I want to. Because, yeah, Casey's only got 4 cards in hand now. And he lost the alternatives to fighting. So Chris could just run this. Like, if Chris has some space, this could get a little spicy real quick here, because there is definitely space in these Watto decks. Casey goes straight to battle, so he says, I'm going to eat another one to search and destroy, which is definitely not his ideal. And yep, he draws one, and then Chris says, yep, lose a force. Casey loses the Rebel Barrier from Muse, so, like, again, this is kind of what I'm talking about. Watto's just going for hard damage early. Your goal is to make them hurt quickly, and that is one of the things that can be a problem for QMC. Like, if you lose a lot of force early, you're not getting much going on. Casey saves 4, which sure looks like he's says, I have an alternative to fighting, and even if you put out First Strike, I'm still going to play it. Excuse me. Been a long day, I apologize. Still recovering a little bit from the awesome weekend in Ohio. And Chris chooses not to drain, goes straight to put a card down. And Casey chooses to lose 2. He loses Ahsoka, so he did have a second Jedi in there. And Celebration from reserve deck. Chris will draw a card with Samulba. And Chris has 19 force and 11 cards in hand. This is where bad stuff happens to somebody. It's just a question of who. And notably, assuming Chris is playing a similar or very similar version to the Watto list Johnny Chu ran. All right, so Chris says, I don't need to run into the alternatives. I don't have a sense. I don't have an answer for it. He just throws Zuckuss and Forlom to Rendili and says, I now satisfy battle plan. I'm going to keep causing damage. I don't love that. Like, he would have stopped the Power Destiny. Hark draws a... I mean, Hark's immune, but doesn't draw unless he has a force to do with it. So you're probably causing some amount of force loss there, or at least forcing out the alternatives and force Casey to pay, and force Casey to have it. I mean, Casey only has 6 cards in hand, and he already lost 1 alternative, so he probably has a second one. Like, I think the only way you lose that is if you have a second one, but make him prove it. Like, force Casey to have the answer and prove the answer. Chris drawing a whole bunch, playing a We Must Accelerate to take a We Must Accelerate, which he's going to get. I think I might have, you got so much force, I might have used that to grab an effect. Just because you got a pile of force, there's no reason not to go get one if you've got one. Because, again, Chris has 14 cards in hand and 10 cards in force pile. Casey, however, is equally loaded with force. He's got 20 force active, but only 6 cards in hand. I'm sure he's not going to drain for 1. Like, even with 20 force, you don't pay 3 to drain for 1. Not this early. So I expect we'll see Casey flip here. I mean, if he can't flip, that's kind of terrible for him. Like, that would be oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Kind of terrible. And Casey did lose Menace Fades to the Search and Destroy. Casey attempts to deploy a Sight and fails. So he paid 1 to give himself a Verify, basically. I mean, if you're going to flip, you could try and deploy a document anyways. There's Yogurt, Yuxgate Virtual, and Leia Rebel Princess. So there's the flip. So now Casey can do keeping stuff to go grab a card, and now he's going to be starting to do things. Well, first apparently Casey attempted to deploy a docking bay that certainly wasn't there, and gave up yet another verify. Apologize. Casey's got 17 cards in force pile. He's got a whole host of options. I don't know that any of them are great right now, though. Like, if you're going to do Jar Jar bombing, you really want him to have someone besides Watto there. So instead, he deploys Ayla Secura to the north corridor and says, okay, well, I got to drain. I've got some steady drain damage going. There's Celebration. He's put himself in a decent spot. And there's Melas, so he's going wide. Casey says, I don't think you necessarily have the cards to attack at multiple locations. I'm going to path around things like Let's Dance. He doesn't satisfy Watering Hole yet. He's only got 4 aliens of species. Ayla, Yaxkit, Melas, and Hark. But still, this is... Casey has a very solid setup. He's very happy with what's going on. I mean, he is going to start causing damage. If nothing happens, he's draining for 4 and retrieving 3. You're perfectly happy with that setup now. Chris, I'm sure, can cause damage of his own, but it depends on what he's got here. And Casey's got to expect a sense. Those are definitely in this deck. Casey goes for another keeping, so he's going to have 5 in hand and 5 force, so he can certainly survive a first strike. He can pay for first strike and alternatives. And we see the drain of 1. There goes Yoda off the top. Drain of 1 at the junkyard. And Ketwall off the top. And a drain of 1 at Mos Espa, I assume. Yep, there's the drain of 1 at Mos Espa. And we see Solo off the top. So, yeah, with 14 cards and 24 force, I cannot imagine that he can't cause damage. It's really more a question of where and what is he going to do with it. So he starts with You're a Slave to throw a card down. I'm totally fine with that play. Casey chooses to lose 2, loses Maz and Elors off the top, and Chris gets to draw another card from reserve. Now, that bottom of his force pile, or the bottom of his reserve, is the last card he put down with Watto, but I don't think he can get to it, so the top card might be the card he put down on turn 1, though, because then he would have paid for Zuckuss and Mist Hunter on top of it, and that'd be it. So he may know what that is. However, he might not be tracking that closely. And actually, no, he wouldn't. He would have known what he drew. So he'd have 5, and then what was the card he put down last turn? So theoretically, he probably drew what he put down a couple turns ago. Again, you got 24 force and 14 in hand, Chris. You got to do something. Don't overthink this. And this is exactly, he says, yep, I'm going to do stuff. Here's Darth Vader on top of Melas. And that might be a bluff. So there's the barrier. Not necessarily a bluff, but just a, force out the barrier, grab it. Now we're going to see someone else somewhere else. And the sense on the barrier. So he did have the senses, which I sort of assume. That means he's not holding it for the alternatives fighting. And the sense fails. Chris with the again. And honestly, that's about exactly the response you want to have. And Casey using the Overseer to deploy related locations. He's getting another sight out when Wirfs deploys a Dark Jedi. So he drops the Incinerator, which is a 1/1 drain -1 for opponent sight. Like you're perfectly content seeing that hit the table. And now he draws Do or Do Not. And there we see Maul with lightsaber from hand going down in front of Ayla. Okay. I'm fine. Whatever. Casey is probably not going to... I mean, Chris only got 8 cards left. Nothing he can come down with in space that's that damaging. You know, really, Zuckuss and Mist Hunter would have been the card simply because you stopped the Power Destiny there. But we'll see. Yep, action is back on Chris, so Casey does not have a barrier or anything of the sort. Now, I don't know that you put out First Strike because Vader's stuck in front of Malos, and Casey will absolutely battle back into that and ping you back, and you don't really care about retrieving prepared defenses. And Chris says, Garrett, you're wrong. Drops First Strike. Casey's got enough force to do whatever he needs to. And there's Casey starts with the, all right, I'll path to the lower corridor. Now, Wirfs' drains where he has an alien cannot be canceled, but he can cancel the Leia drain with the North Corridor text. And you got a bunch of force and you're not doing anything with it. I expect that's what he'll do is he'll draw a few and then he will cancel that lower corridor text. I mean, Casey's still in a pretty fine spot here. Like, after all this turn went through, Wirfs has a drain that's going to get canceled by Leia. He's got a drain that's going to get canceled on his end, which is fine. So he's still going to drain for 2 and retrieve 3. And that 3 retrieval is big because that puts him ahead of the Watto damage. So, like, Chris is causing right now 5 damage a turn, and if you're retrieving 3 of it, you're going to stay ahead of that, most of that damage for a long time. Like, suddenly you're really not actually getting hit that hard. And Chris is going to draw a few. Now, that First Strike is also going to ping him, because I can't imagine Casey won't be battling Vader. And honestly, this might not end well for Chris. Like, I could see Casey, he's only got 3 cards in hand, so he's going to need some sort of addition to the combo, but, like, if you have it, it's going to hit hard. There's the Drain of 1 at Bespin, and we see another Sebulba from hand. I think Chris says, you're not going to attack me, and he's perfectly fine with that. Drain of 1 at the Incinerator, and there goes a We Must Accelerate from hand. Again, likely... Honestly, it's very likely Chris has another one if he wants to go get an effect. Not sure there's an effect he really cares about right now. And draining 1 at the guest quarters, and Chris is going to cancel that guest quarters drain because your drains where you have an alien are protected by QMC. It's not protected where you don't have an alien. Casey goes and keepings. He's got 21 options to pick. He's got a Baskin-Robbins, a whole Baskin-Robbins flavor set up in there. I think that might be 23, but whatever. He got to take 1 of 21 cards. He had a plethora of options, and he grabbed one. Let's see what he does with it. First, he's going to pay 3 to retrieve 3 with Celebration, which, again, is a lot. Like, he gets back Maz, he gets back Ellers, he gets back that path. All of that is good for him. None of that is good for Chris. Like, Chris does not want this to turn into a long game. And there's Lando with Blaster Pistol in front of Darth Maul. Okay. And Lando gets barriered. Is Casey does not have a grabber out. Casey, I think, is at least a little bit concerned that this is the Johnny Chu version that's going to end up inserting on him, and I mean, I don't know yet that they're that worried about that. Your guys are generally decent destiny. Like, your total would be 7 right now. Or 6. Yeah, 3, 2, 1. Casey drops the watering hole. He does not currently have 5 species. He's got 4. Yoxkid is an Ugnaught. Ale is a Twi'lek. Malas is a something. And Hark is a something else. But they're definitely species. 31 flavors, 21 flavors. I was close. There's Figure Dan in the modal nodes, so now he's got 5 species. And watering hole turned on, and stuff is going to start happening. I mean, he is down to 1 card in hand, but like Casey has had every card that he's wanted. And I gotta imagine that 1 card in hand is might not even need to be anything. Like, you just move Yoxkid over with Lando and you're threatening 2 battle destinies. Like, why not? You don't necessarily want to just waste a battle with Malas. Like, you battle with Malas here, you lose him, you're back down to 4 species. Like, I might just move Malas to the docking bay and say thanks. Like, realistically, Wirfs' big battle heavies are in play. He's probably got an aura. He's probably got 2 auras in the deck. I mean, I'm assuming it's similar to Johnny's list. So he's probably sitting on 2 auras and maybe a Kylo. But, like, that's about it. So you're starting to run into a... There's only so much he can do here. We're starting to see damage get poured in here. I apologize. It's garbage day, and I have a very old Return of the Jedi metal garbage can right next to my desk, so getting stuff ready to go and take care of things here. Yep, in case he just draws some, says, all right, I'm going to stick with what I've got. The Lando in front of Maul screams, I have a path. And it's really just, which way do you path? Do you path Lando out after Maul doesn't drain? Or do you, get more aggressive and, like, path Ayla in? Casey, again, saves 4. That, with first strike, he's just saying, I've gotten alternatives. Come get in. It wasn't a cat fight. It was more of a cat disagreement as to who should walk through the door first. As we see, the drain at Rendeli loses computer interface, loses barrier to the Watto's junkyard drain. We're currently watching my son's cat, and my son's cat liked being an only cat and is not anymore, and doesn't like that, and doesn't like that he was declawed before my son got him, and he can't do anything except just sort of punch them in the face with a pillow. So he has to make a lot of noise because he's also very big. And Casey does some Wirfs drains with Vader and gets it canceled by Leia. Throws a card down with Watto. Casey says, fine, I'll lose 2. And gives up a card draw. Wirfs has got to do something here because this math is not in his favor if he doesn't do something. Watering hole is going to hit him like a ton of bricks. And Casey throws out aim high. And says, wait a minute, can I revert that? Which makes sense because I don't think he's... I mean, the only way you're doing anything with that is if you send Watto back and, like, I guess. Like, I don't think you're sending Watto back. So, Casey gets Chris gives the revert. Again, both players are gentlemen. There's, you win here because you play the best, not because you can take advantage of somebody's misclick sort of thing. Let's see what Casey wants to do instead. And Chris is, again, still sitting into play phase. Like, he's got 19 force and 11 in hand. And he's got to do something. You can't... You can't just sit on what you're doing, because what you're doing does not win you the game. There's Aura with gun in front of Yakskit and Leia. Fine. I mean, you got to throw her in front of somebody. My main concern is if you start that battle, Lando gets pathed in, and suddenly you're in an ugly spot. Well, that's one way to not be in an ugly spot, as we see Boba Fett Bounty Hunter come down with Aura. So now it's a whole bunch of Battle Destinies, and you're okay if Lando comes in. So at this point, I think Chris has got to battle and take advantage of first strike and see what he can get. Oh, first he's going to battle with Vader, with Maul against Lando. So he will retrieve the We Must Accelerate. And Casey will have to lose one here. He loses Chewie Bowcaster off the top. So Chris is going to swing. Now I think he's... I mean, I guess if Casey just wants to Hoojix out of here, but otherwise, like, I think you got to path somebody in, but do you have another path? Or was leaving Lando there a mistake? Let's see. Lando's going to take a pot shot at Maul. I mean, I don't think he's got any 6s in the deck. That's close, but not close enough. Missed it by that much. So, right now, Casey's losing 4 plus the Battle Destiny if he doesn't do something. So there's the path. Are we going to move someone in? Yep. So he says, I'm just going to move Lando out. He left Lando, but he didn't move anyone in with him. So, oh yeah, you're right. Leia does stop the battle. And I think Chris just might have figured that out as well. So, yeah, you are very correct, Matt. And you're also the 4th qualifier for day 2, or for the top 4, which, again, it's been, I apologize, kind of a long day. I'm a little bit off my game right now. So, and I don't need anybody in chat pointing out that I'm never really on my game. I can make fun of myself just fine. Thank you very much. Chris, yep, moves Aura over in front of Ayla, and moves moves Boba over in front of Figrin. I kind of assume he'll move Vader with him, and that's a drain 0 site, which kind of stinks, but it is what it is. And yeah, Chris just recycles. Pay 2 for Boba. This game is not going the way he wanted to. I mean, you need to cause a bunch of early damage, and you need to get ahead of things, and right now he's not. Like, again, Casey's going to now drain for 6. Yeah, with Watering Hole. And yeah, Chris says he's playing on hard mode because, yeah, he forgot about Leia. And that was bad, and he forgot Watering Hole last game for a turn. So he's trying to he's trying to really earn this victory. As Casey activates everything, he's going to drain for 6. He's going to keeping, then he's going to retrieve. And then I'd imagine he's going to lose, and Chris loses 2 Emperor's shuttles from used pile, so he was definitely, I think, looking for those to go after Hark and just not seeing them. There's the drain of 2 at the docking bay. There goes Tarkin from reserve, and We Must Accelerate from hand. And we'll see one more drain of 2 here at Leia's hut. Force push combo and Emperor Palpatine from reserve. That Emperor Palpatine Destiny 6 burnt Chris pretty hard on that sense. He was definitely hoping that sense on that barrier would go through a few turns back. Again, if this is Johnny's version, it does run like a bunch of 6s in there, plus some Phantom Menaces. So, like, you're not guaranteed to hit that sense if you're drawing with Vader or Maul. So Casey's going to grab a card, and then, yeah, I expect he'll pay 1 to retrieve 1 with Figrin, and pay 3 to retrieve 3 with Celebration, which is 4 of the 5 cards he lost last turn to Chris's damage. Like, again, this is not damage he can... This is not the way to get ahead of the damage race, because he's still really not getting ahead of it. And Path comes back, Lando with gun, and Chewie with gun all come back. And then we'll see a Figrin Dan in the modal nodes retrieval as well. And there's Rio Durant coming back. Now, that does mean he's only got a 2 sitting on top of his reserve deck. And he goes for the Recirculate with Figrin. Now, 2 might be enough, because, like, if you battle against Aura, I guess you don't want to battle against Aura right now. There's quite a mercenary to take Chewie into hand. Well, he couldn't have done it before he recirculated, so he's got the 5 now, but it does shuffle the reserve, so it's not a 2 sitting on top, which is fine. But his Destiny really aren't great. I mean, you got back a 5, a 1, a 1, and a 2. And then he paid 4 to do it, so we don't know what those 4 he paid are. All right, you just go straight into battle with Ayla. I don't love that. He gets back the Resistance Transport. Chris loses the We Must Accelerate. But Aura can shoot Ayla right now. And Ayla's a Jedi, so he's getting the 2. Is Rio a 4? I thought Rio was a 2. 4 would be really good. Oh, Rio is a 4. Wow. For some reason I was thinking he was a 2, because aliens are 2. So we do see Ayla is hit by Aura. So I don't love that battle from Casey. I guess maybe he didn't have anything else going on. He draws a 5, so he's going to kill Aura. He's not going to cause any overflow. I mean, it turns into a 6, so Chris is right now down 2 after forfeit. Yep, there's the 5, so he kills the Aura, but it costs him an Ayla to do it, and frankly, Ayla's more valuable than Aura, especially because that shuts off Watering Hole. Casey is now down to 4 aliens on table. It shuts off Watering Hole, and it shuts off Figrin. I don't know, Matt. I don't get to see those things. He had a 18-card force pile, and he took something. Apparently not something great, because he didn't go... Like, that Ayla battle was not... did not go the way he wanted it to go. Not having any backup for her and just losing her feels real bad. And we see Figrin move over, and Casey's now just drawn a bunch of cards. If Chris can do something here, this could get a little hairy. Like, Casey draws a bunch, Chris activates, he's leaving 5 in reserve, which screams he's got, again, guy with a saber. We see Casey put that down to take an independent starship into hand from reserve deck. He does not have one. I don't love that play, because I would be very unsurprised to see Wirfs do something like, here's Kylo plus Dr. Ian Ponda on top of Leia and Yaxkit, since he couldn't get the Aura and Boba hit to hit last round. Like, he's got the force to do it. That would be a nasty little hit. And Casey goes and grabs a card with keeping. Like, maybe you can barrier your way out of it, but I don't know. I would not. I don't love the way this game is going for Casey right now. Like, he's had the damage train is going somewhat his way, but it's not as good as he'd like it to be. And he lost. It is barrier that got grabbed. It was Rebel Barrier that was grabbed when it was played on Darth Vader, and then he failed on the sense. And we see Casey cancel the drain of 2 by getting Ayla back with Leia, and then immediately losing Leia to a drain of 1. Or excuse me, losing Ayla to a drain of 1. Drain of 1 at the junkyard going through. There's the resistance transport from hand. And drain of 1 at Mos Espa. I mean, honestly, Boba Bounty Hunter, Boba Fett, and Slave 1 are probably the 2 most played Bobas, but you don't see a ton of Boba Bounty Hunter. Like, Perimeter Scan shuts him down so hard, and he's one of those characters that is not very good alone, so he has to be used in conjunction with someone, and he's expensive. So you don't see as much Boba Bounty Hunter as I think you do. Like, Chris puts a card down and Casey says, all right, I'll let you play it. And Chris reveals that it's Cad Bane and says, fine, I'll pay 2 to put Cad Bane in front of Figure and Dan in the modal nodes. Notably, Casey is not going to be able to barrier anything after he paid that because you have to stack it and pay. There's Aura Singh in front of Malos. Honestly, if Chris had space, this could have gone very poorly. I mean, Boba Bounty Hunter costs 5, and he doesn't do anything by himself, so you're really committing to paying closer to probably 10 the turn you use him. And then if you want to keep him around, it's another 2. Like, he's good in decks. There are spots you really want to use him, but there's definitely spots where he's not nearly as good as you feel like he should be. And Casey uses Rescue in the Clouds to stop the shot on Malos, cancels the Destiny. So Chris doesn't get the 6 through. So he does have to crack a 4 for Battle Destiny. Client will do it. That's a 5. So he is going to kill Malos. Malos will likely kill Aura back. Yep, that's a 1. That's enough. Unless Casey's got a Dark Time. Oh, never mind. There's Yaxkit to take Lando in hand, which is good for Casey. And there's a 5, so it doesn't even matter if he's got something to subtract it. Aura go dead. But, I mean, honestly, Chris is probably okay with that. Like, Aura dies. Malos dies. Now you battle with Cad Bane and retrieve Aura. And you're perfectly happy with that. And again, you're grinding him out of guys, shutting off Watering Hole, putting him in that position where he's struggling to cause as much damage as he'd like to cause. So, Wirfs retrieves the Aura Sing. Casey loses Luke, the Last Jedi, from hand. There's the 5 for Battle Destiny, which means the modal nodes are going to die. And Chris draws a 3. Excuse me, Casey draws a 3 back. Both their names start with C. It's throwing me off. Cad's got no immunity, and okay, Cad dies. Figuring dies. Fine. Like, that turn went as good as it possibly could have for Chris. The Game 1 matchup was Chris Wirfs on QMC against Casey's Revenge of the Sith Maul. Chris won by 6. And whatever, 32-39 and lost. Chris wanders over Boba and Vader. Draws a couple. One more. Probably going to stop right there and recycle and pay 2 to keep Fed alive up. He says one more. I'm not scared of just saving one force. He's going to pay 2 to keep Fett alive. And all of a sudden, this game has turned a little bit on Casey. Like, Casey's got 17 force down. It's still early. I mean, there's still game left. Casey's got 17 down and 6 in hand. He activates most, but not all of it, leaving 3. So he says he's going to come down, probably planning to come down with Lando with gun right there and do some damage. But he's only draining for 1. Watering Hole is offline, and no, he cannot cancel the drain because Yakskit is an alien. And the objective says your drains where aliens are can't be canceled or modified. So he canceled it when it was just Leia. But with Yakskit there, he cannot cancel it. And I think, yeah, you move him over to threaten it. Like, if you're Chris, what's your worst case scenario? Is Casey drops Lando plus Din and draws 3 destiny to your 3 destiny, and you hit someone at, like, you're very okay with basically forcing Casey to move, because also Vader and Boba are at a drain 0 site. So you've got to move Vader and Boba. And you can either move them to an empty site and eat a drain of 1, or you move them there and block the drain. And Casey says, well, I'm going to play the wild card, and Wirfs with the barrier on it. Casey's probably okay-ish with that. Like, if he was planning, I mean, he's probably planning to fill the wild card anyways, and that doesn't really change much when that's what you're going to do. And Chris throws out Oppressive Enforcement, which, okay. There's Dash Render V on the wild card. There's Lee-Sub in front of Sebulba. That's why, if I was Chris, I would have saved 2, because now you're going to lose Sebulba. And Casey does not have a grabber out, Matt. And Oppressive Enforcement gives him the free Shizor's Bounty because it's a immediate effect. That's why. Yeah, Casey doesn't have a grabber out. Casey, I think, is holding on to the last shield to pull in case Chris inserts numbers. Yeah, this match is not going Casey's way. Chris caused a bunch of early damage, and then it looked like Casey was stabilizing a little bit, and then Chris caused a bunch more damage and really just took Casey off stuff, and like it all... I didn't love the Ayla versus Aura battle that turned off Watering Hole, and then Chris was able to knock out a few more. And yeah, not having a grabber, like, so far Goldenrod has saved him, or has cost Chris 2 force, because every other time Casey has chosen to lose 2. If you're going to lose 2 the majority of the time, why put out Goldenrod? Yeah, if he had cleared Zuckuss, he'd be fine, and I think Chris also knew that, yes, he needs to keep that going, because I don't know what Chris has left for space. He lost the 2 Emperor's shuttles early, which was bad for him. And yeah, Casey's moving Yogurt to one site, to the non-battleground, Leia to the incinerator. I mean, if you're Wirfs, I think you just ignore them. Like, wait, you're going to drain me for 1 total, and I'll drain you for 1 back and say fine. This is not going Casey's way. And Casey saves 3, which again means he cannot alternatives. So Wirfs could also just throw a passenger or a co-pilot on Zuckuss and Mr. who can cover forfeit and be perfectly content. Although he doesn't have that. I mean, he's got Tarkin. It's probably about the only pilot he's got. Because, yeah, he's probably only running one CAD. So Chris activates a bunch, leaving himself again 5 force. So he says, I'm going to do something. It probably is jump Lee sub. And Casey goes to grab a card, so he's going to leave himself 2 cards in force pile. Again, not enough to barrier, even if he had one. And, I mean, are you looking for the Hujix here? Like, I think he actually lost his Hujix early, and I don't know if he ever retrieved it. I think he lost the Hujix combo real early. So let's see what he does here. Because, yeah, he's down to 2 force. So drain a 2 at the North Corridor. And he is out of Leia cancels, so that drain goes through. Casey loses an Arcona and an Alternatives Fighting. The Arcona makes perfect sense with first strike. That's just a drain of 1 at that point. Drain of 1 at the guest quarters. And the alternatives, he no longer has the force to pay it. And is probably sort of banking on the fact that Chris at most maybe has Mara in ship left and might just not be coming down in space. Casey loses the Maz from reserve deck to the drain at the guest quarters, loses Escape Pod and We're Doomed to the drain at Watto's Yard. Chris moves in to deploy. I expect we'll see put a card down because Casey will have to lose 2. Like if he uses 2, he says, I don't have a Hujix or a way to play it, and Lee sub is going to get myrtleized real quick. Because again, Chris has got 8 cards in hand and 17 cards in force. Like, force pile count, Chris has 22 down and 8 in hand, so he's got 30 cards. Casey has 14 down and 3 in hand, so he's at 17. And yeah, this is... something needs to turn here because Chris is definitely in the lead and in a very commanding position. Like right now, Chris is threatening a drain of 2 or 3 and a celebration retrieval of 1. And like, all right, let's do this. So that being said, Chris goes straight to battle. I don't like any of that. I don't understand. I don't understand that play at all. Like, you're telling me in an 8-card hand, you didn't have a single card you were willing to put down with You're a Slave, and you didn't have a single character or anything else in hand? Alright, so he's Lana Dobreed during move phase to move, I'd imagine probably Vader, moving just Boba over with Sebulba. All right. I'm okay. I'm not sure what was in his hand, what the thought process was in terms of just doing nothing until move phase. I don't like it. And now he's going to draw, which means he's leaving Zuckuss alone against the wild card. Oh, I think he is requesting to go back to move. Yeah, he just said he clicked through, and Casey said, what do you want to do differently? And I'm sure it's going to be, I want to move Zuckuss. Yeah, he says, continue moving. Yeah. And Casey says, okay, because again, this is... And... didn't revert far enough back. This is, again, you're trying to do things that allow your opponent to play the game they intended to play. That is the gentlemanly thing to do at times, and our game has hit a point where everyone is a gentleman. There's no point in, all of these guys in the OCS top 8 are good enough to win on their merits, not on I hit pass too quickly and you just want to take advantage of that. Like that's, you don't want to win that way. So that being said, Chris does move Zuckuss away because discretion is the better part of valor, and he's going to pick some up. And like, he's going to get drained for 2. He's going to drain for 1 at Rendell. He's going to get drained for 1 at Bespin. He's going to cancel the Leia drain with Maul's text. And now he's playing Point Man to go get something from his force pile. Go get any one card and put a card from his hand on the bottom of his use pile. And Point Man on top of use pile. So now he knows what that bottom card is if he wants to use it for Destiny. And he just went and got whatever was out of that 6-card force pile, which is, honestly, I think he's probably hunting to try and put together a space package. He lost his 2 Emperor's shuttles, so he's probably trying to put together Grand Moff Tarkin plus Mara and ship, and try and just close this by clearing Hark. Casey activates all but 2. I mean, you're going to draw 1 with Lee Sub, and I guess maybe if it's an alien, you can draw it into hand. Casey's only got 3 cards in hand. Like, he's going to grab a card with keeping. So Chris can cancel the Leia drain. It'll cost him 2. So he may choose not to, and we see Casey went for a Harksef pull just to see what his destiny was, and gives up a verify to Wirfs, which, I mean, at this point I don't think a verify means much. It's what are those 2 destiny. And Casey activates 1 more, so maybe there was not an alien in there that he was going to potentially draw with Yoxkit. And he says, well, I'll just activate 1 more and leave it up to fates and see what we got. Drain a 1 at Bespin. Chris loses a sense from hand. He may have another one. I would hold on to a. I always want to, hold a sense. Like, it's going to go through because Casey put out do or do not. So you just save that and go, all right, if this is when it's going to hit. And he loses a Watto from hand as well. I mean, like, Casey could theoretically get spicy here, and although if he sends Watto to use, Wirfs has not used the Watto deploy, so he could just only activate it, activate down to Watto and then deploy him from reserve. He deployed that Watto from hand on his first turn, and just Watto's never left. Casey goes and grabs a card with keeping. I expect we'll see a Lee Sub attempt here, because why the heck not? Well, first he's going to use 1 to celebrate, get back that 5. This is not Casey's, not going the way Casey wants it to go. Let's see what his plan is to finish this out and figure out how to win. Casey requests a revert here. He may have just decided he didn't want to pay. Yep, Casey says, no, I don't want to pay for that retrieval. He needs all that force, which doesn't shock me. I mean, he's really only got 12 force. He's got 4 cards in hand, but, like, everything costs right now. And he's got to back up Lee Sub. He's got to find something somewhere. There's Leia's resistance transport on top of Zuckuss, and Chris with another barrier that Casey still can't grab because Casey didn't play a grabber. And Matt is, I'm sure, MHT is sitting at home just banging his head against the keyboard like, why are you not grabbing this? There's Figrindan in the Moldal Nodes in front of Watto. They draw if unable to otherwise, which is really good against Watto. And And Chris might be kicking himself a little bit. I think Casey might have baited out that barrier with the Leia's transport. Yep, there's the battle at the junkyard. Casey is going to retrieve one now with first strike and cause Chris to lose one. He's doing the retrieval now where he passed on it during the control phase because there may have been a different thing he wanted to go through. Like if the ship wasn't buried, he might have been planning to put a pilot on him and just try and take him out of space. Chris plays projective telepathy. So Casey says, fine, I'll use those 2 force. However, that does put Casey in a position of he's only moving either Lee Sub or someone to back up Leia's transport, which is not great. So he draws a 6, so he's got to lose Watto and 3. It may just be the Gick that I think he got very early. Yep, and there's the Gick. And frankly, Chris is kind of fine with that. Like, losing Watto stings a little bit, but like, now are you going to move Figrin over to protect Lee Sub? Are you going to move Lee Sub over? Or are you going to move Leia's resistance transport over? Because, yep, Lee Sub is the most potential damage. It's 11 power plus 2 battle destinies. Leia's resistance transport is just going to go away. Casey now, though, has no force. He's got no force and he's got 2 cards in hand. So Chris, I think, has lost his other 2 Wattos. I don't think he's got another Watto. He may not be able to ever flip back again. But he may be okay with that. Like, let's see what he does here. Because he's going to certainly retrieve that Gick with the battle at Malastare. And he is going to drain for 3, 4 before he does that. Like, he's got Casey hard on the ropes. He doesn't have any force to play rescue in the clouds. That first strike will stop the rescue. So the resistance transport is kind of a sitting duck. It may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, Matt, but I am not a spoon. I do know some things. So I don't know why my wife started laughing. It's not like I haven't made that joke 1,000 times before. But whatever. So we'll see Adrena 2 at the North Corridor. There's Dinjarin and Ancient Watering Hole off the top. Adrena 1 with Vader at the guest quarters. And there goes the Rescue in the Clouds off reserve deck, but doesn't matter. And Adrena 1 at Mos Espa. There's Calfal off reserve. I mean, there is another Watto. So Chris did have one in hand. That's going to flip. He uses Watto to get the chance cube, which there isn't one, and that's fine. He just wanted to see what his reserve deck was. He knows Casey can't pay, so we'll see drop something down to make him lose 2. And Casey loses Escape Pod and We're Doomed, along with Keep Your Eyes Open. And now Chris will get a card draw if he wants it with Sebulba. And I don't know how much longer Casey wants to drag this out, because this doesn't look good for Casey. There's Aura Singh in front of Leia. There's the client. I'm like, Chris, you got to back her up with somebody now. There's the client along with her, so now he can battle Leia. Yeah, this game's all over. Like, Casey hasn't conceded yet, and maybe he's going to force it to go all the way down, because he did only lose by 6. Like, he's getting close, but I don't know that he's got much left there. So, battle against Leia. First strike, he'll retrieve the Gick and force the loss. Yeah, that is 100% correct, Matt. He did not pull his grabber shield because he was. I do think he was saving it for the odds, but odds wasn't going to hit him that hard because most of his guys are decent number. So I think that was a misplay. And again, yeah, you're right. The golden red shield, a grabber and aim high definitely changes the texture of this game a whole bunch. Chris does draw a 6 for Total Battle Destiny. He draws a path. I'm not sure why it was +1. So he's got 1, 2. Oh, he does have 5 aliens on table. Okay. So, and Wirfs loses an aura and then uses the client to take an aura, and then loses the Layerable Princess. So he does have 5 species on table right now, which does get him. And there's the aim high shield, but I think it's frankly too little, too late. There's the battle in space. Chris will again. He's going to retrieve the client. And Casey's going to lose another card. Casey's down to 1 in hand and 7 on table. And he's going to lose at least the Rebel Transport. And there's a 4 for Battle Destiny. That puts the total power to 9. So he loses the Transport in 1. I mean, 9 to 4 is fine. Like, losing that isn't big, as we see the path of least resistance go away. Chris is, honestly, I think he just walked Boba Fett. Yep, walks Boba Fett in with Watto, so now he's drawing 2 Battle Destiny there. And I just say go. Like, you don't need to draw anything. You don't. Casey can't really do anything. Yep, he moves Sebulba over as well and just says, fine, you want to do this? I'm going to make it sting at least if you fight. And recirculates, pay 2 to keep Boba alive. Casey's only got 6 force. Like, he's got 6 cards down. He can deploy. He can use the modal nodes to recirculate, but he can't do anything else. And I don't think he can get Chris below. I don't think he can get Chris to 0 while staying above 6. So he does. I mean, he's got Watering Hole in play, so he's going to drain him for 5. So we see the barrier and U3PO go from used. There's another drain of 2 at Rendley. So, like, Casey's not completely out of it, but I don't see how he stops damage. And Chris doesn't need to win, he just needs to lose by less than 6. So, like, Casey now goes and takes a card. That puts him below that 6. Because that'll put him at 5 force total, or 5 force down. And I don't know what his answer is. Like, you can't. If you battle with Lisub and Figrin, you're going to lose at least one of them and probably both of them. You're going to give Wirfs a card back with Caesar's Bounty. I guess he retrieves one with Figrin. Like, he's got Chris down to 16 cards and 3 in hand. And he might not have a lot. Like, Chris might not have a lot he can go after him with, but, like, I mean, you going to try and move Yoxkit and just YOLO and hope he doesn't have anything? There's Maz going down to the North Corridor. I keep my mouse out of the way. You guys have seen it auto zoom like 3 or 4 times, and I apologize for that. So Maz to the West Gallery. Okay. Like, Casey's gonna try, but like he can move in front of Malastare, but he's still gonna get drained for 3. Make that 4 because he moves Lisub over. And he moves Figrin over, so he's going to get drained for 4. And he only has 7 force. Like, I'm sure I can turn off auto zoom. That sounds like it would involve knowing technology, and if I turn it off, then I'm going to forget to turn it on when I'm playing, and I'll get annoyed. So I just got to remember to keep my mouse out of the way. Again, a little bit tired today. Not on my A game. I apologize. So we see the drain of 1 at Malastair. KC loses local defense. Put that down from reserve. Drain of 2 at the North Corridor. We see quite a mercenary and Path of Least Resistance from reserve. Drain of 1 at Leia's Hut. We see the Path of Least Resistance going away. So Chris did leave 2 in reserve deck. Drain of 1 at Watto's Junkyard. I mean, Casey, oh, he did have the Hujix in hand. Okay. And there's Aura with Blaster Rifle. And Casey concedes as Wirfs was just going to use Watto to end it. Chris Wirfs wins by 16 to take the match and advance to the top 4. Congratulations to Chris Wirfs. Congratulations also to Casey. I mean, making the top 8 in the OCS is a heck of an accomplishment. There is no shame in losing to the top 4. These guys played very, very well. With that, as stated, I'm a little tired on my B game. I'm going to let you all get back to your things. Thank you very much for watching. Hope everyone has a great night, and